Turning our focus to this now, residents of Atlantis on the West Coast are appealing to the National Police Department to beef up resources at the local police station. A police imbizo is currently underway at Avondale Primary School with the police ministry. The residents say most of the crimes remain unresolved due to lack of capacity. They've complained of rampant gangsterism and gun violence. To unpack this further, let's now welcome crime expert Thabang Bogopa. Thabang, a very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for availing yourself. So when we look at last year's police crime stats, they revealed that of the 221 gang-related murders in the country between July and September of last year, 177 were in the Western Cape alone. I mean, what factors do you think are driving the increase of gang violence in the country, but especially when you look at areas like Atlantis on the West Coast?
Thank you, my sister. Good afternoon, and good afternoon to the viewers. And it is indeed sad to see such a large proportion of gang-related murders being populated in just one province. However, we need to face facts for what they are, mainly in the fact that the Western Cape has some of the worst socio-economic conditions in the country. Also, lack of competition in terms of trade and in business, but also deep poverty in the Western Cape. And lastly, the gang culture and the deep poverty that's there in the Western Cape is what's leading to some of these challenges that we are observing in the Western Cape, particularly leading to the murders. Understanding that at the helm of some of these murders is to sustain, number one, the illegal drug market, and lastly, the gang territory. The two are at the helm of ensuring that there's always instability in the Western Cape.
I mean, just given some of those facts that you've just pointed out, it then becomes very difficult to have almost like a one-sided approach to solution thinking, because the community on the one hand talk about daily occurrences of just living in fear, and they say, at least to their vantage point, that they need police stations at least to be beefed up. But when I'm hearing you, listening to what you're saying, it will take more than police stations being beefed up.
Yes, my sister, the issue of cutting budgets of policing in Western Cape is also another problem. But we need to be honest, the political disjuncture between Western Cape and the whole country, it's also affecting the residents vehemently in Western Cape. And also we need more policing abilities, not just the police stations, but some of the strategic units within the South African police services have to be there in the Western Cape. And in as much as we are used to having some of the DPCI units being at a provincial level, in Western Cape we need them at regional or at district, whereby some of these crimes can be kept urgently and with more manpower, because some of the gangs, you look at, we have about 100,000 young men in the Western Cape who are part of about 130 gangs. That's so much strength that if you were to go with a unit of about less than 50 police officials, they would be outpowered by those gangsters. So we need more collaboration between the national and the provincial government, focusing more on safety and security in the Western Cape.
We speak about gang violence and organized crime interchangeably. Just perhaps unpack, what these two mean in terms of just a relation. Can we say that gang violence is a form of organized crime? Are these gangs sophisticated, or are we looking at something else, especially when we look at the Western Cape as an example?
Thank you, my sister. Let me start by talking about the Prevention of Organized Crime Act, which has been ignored for so long in South Africa. Part of organized crime include forming or participating in a gang. So being part of a gang is obviously categorized as organized crime. But of course, in the Western Cape, there are other forms of organized crimes, which I would say rely on the existence of gangs to shy away. You look at the illegal trade of the abalones, the illegal trade of certain drugs, that in as much as we are looking at the gangs some of the mainstream economic criminal activities are occurring there in that province. So we are looking at gangs, whereas there are more other sophisticated organized crimes and multi-international organized crimes that are occurring. But the easiest scapegoat is to make sure that there's always gangs. And now these gangsters are competing for the dark world or the dark market, which is the bigger scale organized crime. So there will always be a new game emerging, because with the high poverty rate in Western Cape, any new gang would want to be part of the larger scale organized crime or being paid to protect certain business practices in the Western Cape.
You spoke earlier about, socio-economic conditions in the Western Cape and how they contribute to what we are seeing today, including gang violence. Notwithstanding their challenges, but what strategies can the SAPS apply here, given that communities feel under siege and helpless at this point?
So the SAPS would have to partner with other subsidiaries of government to ensure that at least there are ample opportunities for people to attempt to have a decent life without relying on crime. But then also in terms of the competition, the competition tribunal, I think, should come to play in the Western Cape to ensure that people can fairly participate in other trades or other businesses. There's a lot of businesses in the Western Cape that, are a no-go area. And unfortunately, for particularly, most dominantly, the colored community and the African communities, which are the blacks. Now, if SAPS was to partner with other, even the SDFs, the development and funding institutions of the government should go more into ensuring that even at local levels, some of the emerging entrepreneurs, some of the emerging businesses, emerging schools, emerging entities are being funded to ensure that they can sustain a livelihood without relying on crime. Because currently, it is more easier to sustain your livelihood and the family livelihood through crime than any other means. But then let us look at also in this facet, my sister, that the justice system is, I would say it's having a lot to deal with in Western Cape. So even if you were to open a case, I looked at the stat that there's a decrease of about 8% in the murder cases. But if we were to go deep and look into it, you'll understand that it was an attempted murder and the person died 2 days later. So the crime stats were not updated. Or it was an assault GBH, the person passed away in hospital. So the challenges are way so much that even the people are no longer willing to testify. So the SAPS would have to partner with more entities of government, especially the judiciary system, Department of Justice, and where needs be, some of the cases should be trialed within or outside Western Cape in other courts so that there's justice, and where possible, some of the most serious gangs should be detained or in other correctional centers outside Western Cape, because some of the gangs are able to control what's happening in the society, even though they are still behind bars in the common correctional centers in Western Cape.
Thabang, thank you so much for unpacking all of that for us and, of course, weighing in on this particular matter. Always a pleasure having you on the show too. Thabang Bogopa there is a crime expert.